final speaker is Dimitri, and he's going to compare the situation in Germany and the UK in terms of digitisation of urban planning. So hopefully that will get us thinking with some questions coming forward about some of the contrasts between practices in the two countries.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm going to give you a short overview over the digitalization of German city planning, how the status quo is actually. So this is my outline, just for you, for your information, short outline. And basically the key question we're dealing with is that I think it's common sense, every society sphere, every discipline is digitizing. And this is why city planners are facing the same question. So how do digital technologies transform city planning, and how they can actually transform digital city planning if we use them consciously. And for this reason, I think it makes sense to take a historical overview, or to take a look back how digital trends or technological trends themselves affected city planning before. And it all started with EVP systems, when basically with the first wave of automation in the 1970s, electronic data processing unburdened the administration work within every industry, and also within city planning industry or city planning discipline, that enabled it to manage the data flow necessary for city planning more efficiently. Then, following this, CAD software and GIS systems were introduced, which basically digitized the process of visualizing city plans or city planning documents, and GIS basically added the spatial dimension to economic, social, and demographic data. Now we are in a very interesting situation, because now we have other trends stepping in. For instance, web-based participation. So beginning in the 2000s with the rise of the social web, we actually had first tries of participatory planning initiatives. And also what's interesting, we have semantic plans, which means that we're adding or supplementing traditional plan documents with additional information. And last but not least, for this period, we have also digital realities. So I think it's another current trend that is kind of conquering the world of city planning. Digital realities, augmented realities, mainly augmented realities, virtual realities, but also cityscopes. But I will elaborate on that later on. For the near future, I think we can talk about, because very often, basically the connection between urban development and digital technologies is the smart city concept. And for this reason, it makes sense that in the near future, urban planners are going to face the technological trends, like the main technological trends are going to be basically the sensor technology, or things like the blockchain technology for modernizing the land register system, for instance. But today, and also, of course, the city information modeling and digital twin city is a topic we discussed today, but in Germany, to be honest, this is something that is really not the status quo, or not a matter of today, because as for now, we're just dealing with buildings that we want to digitize. So that's why I'm going to focus on these three spheres, because they are basically representing the current digital trends of city planning in Germany. Let's start with web-based participation. When it comes to web-based participation, there's basically two movements that are worth mentioning. On one hand, there's those very short-term problems with, like in the public space, where many city administrations already succeeded in setting up an active citizen app where you can directly communicate with the city administration and say, hey, there is a damage somewhere, there is a broken traffic light, for instance. And then they can solve the problem very, very fast, very quickly. But on the other hand, city planners can also benefit from web-based participation in the long run, because what they can do is, they can, for instance, as they did in Karlsruhe with the research project Go Karlsruhe, what they can do is they can set up a map and tell people, where do you feel comfortable? like where do you like your neighborhood and where you don't. And following this databases, basically, what the city planners are enabled to do is to actually realize, okay, here we need another path. Like people don't want to walk more than necessary, and for this reason, it makes sense to build something over there. But also another way how to approach, basically, how to use this long-term approach when it comes to web-based participation is what the city of Hamburg did. They set up a digital platform for actually standardizing and standardizing the feedback concerning urban planning. So let's say we have a new project, a new project that has to be planned and also built. What you can do is you can submit your opinion on that directly on this digital platform, which makes it very convenient also for later on actually analyzing it, evaluating it, and I know that the city of Hamburg is even using AI for doing that because they can detect certain semantic keywords and then basically categorize better the information or the feedback from the urban community. Yes. Now another very important trend that I was mentioning before is the plan documents with semantic information. You have to imagine this is basically the status quo. So we have plan documents and they're on paper, and yeah, you print them, you have PDFs, you have very different data formats. And now the added value of semantic plans is basically to have a cloud-based system where this whole information is basically transformed into intelligent digital systems, where you can also combine the planning and also the construction law that is valid. And of course, this enables stakeholders, like this is again the status quo, who have very different data formats. This enables them to communicate more efficiently because now you have a standardized data format, which is basically in German X-Planung. And there you have a cloud system, and everybody can, or every of those stakeholders can basically access this cloud system. Yes, so I think this is a very important trend that is basically introduced in German city planning. Now, the last thing I'd like to focus on is basically how digital realities are affecting urban planning. I think that every urban planner cherishes or appreciates very truthful and very interesting ways of visualizing complex urban data sets. And for this reason, I'd like to name 3 possible technologies that basically enable that. And cityscopes are basically, it's a modern it's a table, and this table is adjusting in real time using tag technology. Like for instance, you have a brick and you put the brick somewhere else, and the technology is basically adjusting the scenario in real time, which makes the process of planning very interactive and also very interesting and very easy. Now, what the city of Hamburg did is pretty interesting because they, in summer 2016, they launched a project called Finding Places, and this is when they encouraged the urban community to participate in workshops and to find spots for refugees arriving in Hamburg. For 20,000 refugees, they needed to find actually spots in public space where they can realize accommodations. Now, nearly 400 people participated, and almost about 160 proposals were then sent as a result of these workshops to the city of Hamburg. And this was a win-win situation because you show how complex urban planning is actually to the community, but you also incorporate the local expertise of those people. And yeah, it's just people understand each other, people talk to each other, and it brings stakeholders in a very interactive way together. It brings stakeholders together in a very interactive way. Yes. Now, another thing is augmented and virtual realities. And here I'd like to mention a short example made by the city of Munich, where they did actually, what they did is they're basically piloting augmented reality projects in order to visualize planning concepts of planned neighborhoods. So this is actually the real world, this is the virtual world. And what they're trying is they're piloting those projects in order to understand whether to gather experience with these technologies and whether to understand whether they can help in discussions with politicians, but also citizens, in order to convince them, but also to show them the plans. Content, basically. Yes, and now my last example is the 3D. Oh yeah, that's another picture for virtual realities, but it's basically the same content. And my last example is basically about digital realities in terms of smart devices that are used on smart devices as smartphones, but also tablets. And here I'd like to mention a little example, because Berlin's Economic Development Agency is using basically smart maps provided by a German institute, Planner Institute, for finding spots for real estate, like for actually finding real estate development opportunities within the city. And this is very useful because business stakeholders, they're not city planners, they don't understand, they don't have the specific background. And for this reason, they have provided a very interesting tool to concretize and to understand what they actually want, like their own demand, but also to match this demand with available spots within a city. So I think this is a very remarkable example, and that's why I wanted to mention it. And my last point, aspect basically initiates a discussion in terms of how is the situation in UK, because in Germany we have some improvement, like in comparison to a few years ago, but I think there's still a long way to go, and for this reason I'd like to open the discussion and also incorporate, of course, the whole input before that, so we don't have to limit ourselves to urban planning or city planning. We can talk about real estate as well. Thank you.